Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 505 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing super good. I got to spend most of my weekend watching Magic for the first time in a while, and I am super excited about that. But we're going to get into that in a minute. We got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. What are you drinking for breakfast today?
I am just having a body armor electrolyte drink instead of a water,
Ooh.
which I should be drinking water.
Hey, that sounds pretty healthy, though. Electrolytes, that's got to be good for you.
Sure.
It's called
yeah,
salt.
sure.
It's just
Yeah. We have enough of that as card game players.
Oh, that is true. Anyway, today's cast, the last couple of weeks, we had so much Commander news that we've kind of been oddly Commander focused. But today, we're going to be talking some constructed Magic. We had a huge Pioneer tournament this weekend. So we're going to talk about the state of Pioneer. We're going to talk about some Modern and where the format's at and if the bannings worked. I know Richard's been playing some Modern lately. And then we'll probably get into some Standard too. And then we actually are going to answer a Fishmail question this week. I promise we're going to make a point to make sure it happens. We have heard your feedback. So we're going to get to the Fishmail. Before we get into all that, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip it with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service and send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic. And let's start off with Pioneer and how I spent my weekend. So this weekend was the regional championships. And this is like a very big event. If you don't know regionals now, this is like, I guess, kind of pro tour level. Like, so if you do well in this tournament, not only do you get the top 8 goes directly to the next pro tour, the top 2 goes directly to Worlds at the end of the year. So there's some like huge prizes on the line. And there were almost 2,000 people in this event. Star City Games ran it, 1,817 people altogether. So this was one of the biggest Magic tournaments we've had in a while. And it was so nostalgic. Like it was like I was back in a time machine to like 2010 or something with Cedric and Patrick doing coverage and like people, sweating out for like the whole weekend. I felt so bad. This one guy that made the top 8 was like, was playing so slowly. He'd been playing for like 16 hours straight and he was just like dragging, but he made it all the way to the finals with his Rakdos deck. It was just like such an amazing tournament. So I don't know if either one of you got a chance to see any of this. Did either one of you check out the regional championships this weekend?
I followed I couldn't really closely follow. I just followed from afar, checked in from posts and things like that. Mostly just because this weekend I was at LA Comic-Con and I got to do a panel and do all this other stuff. So yeah, but I was keeping an eye on it. And funny enough, we were talking about at the panel how wild Magic is when it comes to 1v1 formats right now and how they feel like they're thriving. And like specifically Standard, and then you see like Pioneer. And I think after I saw the metagame get posted, I was like, this looks really good. Like Pioneer looks really good. And okay, sure. Azorius Control, one of the most popular decks there. So naturally I'm like, oh, hold on. This looks pretty good. And legitimately though, even though it was like a lot of Azorius, there's a lot of other decks as well. You saw Rakdos Prowess, Phoenix, all of these. So the metagame looks like it's thriving. So I think this is an overall positive. So, yeah, it was cool watching from afar and seeing how Pioneer, which I thought was once on its way out the door, well, it looks like it's back.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
What is an RC? Explain to me. I just know rules committee. What is a regional championship? Translated to boomer terms for me, Seth. Is this a Grand Prix? What is this thing?
Do you know our
So,
like PPTQs?
Not exactly. This is like the highest
Arena
level
qualifiers.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
kind
yes,
of. My
yes.
understanding of the system is you qualify for the regional championship through smaller qualifiers, like at your local game store or whatever, and then you go to the regional championship. And if you do well there, you qualify automatically for a pro tour, and the top 2 qualify automatically for worlds. Plus, you get a bunch of money for it. So this is like, I don't know what would this directly compare to from the
It's
past.
one
Trim? Is
directly
there
below the
any-
Pro Tour, right? Is
It's-
that
it's
the
Right, which is
Yeah.
that's the R's. Okay, so then there's the PPTQs that led to regional championship qualifiers. So then what that led to is this.
Is the reason this is like the highest level of the qualifier process,
Yeah.
basically. Like it's
And then you were at the Pro Tour.
I don't want to call it a pro tour because it's like 1,800 people. It's kind of like a weird mix between like a pro tour because you have to qualify for it and a old Grand Prix because it is massive and they just have so many people playing.
But everyone here is really good because they had to get good like twice, apparently. They had to win
Yes.
like 2 tournaments on the way here. So it's actually higher level than a Grand Prix because anyone could just kind of saunter into a Grand Prix and play it. So this was a high level event. 2,000. There's so many sweaty Magic players when I see that number. But Krim was right. The metagame looks pretty good. Like the top 3 decks are only like 11, 12% a piece. And then you have a bunch of like 7, 5%. So it looks pretty spread out. I'm curious though. There's a lot of red. So Azorius Control, top dog at 13%. This is at the tournament, by the way. But then we got Rakdos Prowess. Is it Phoenix? Incarnation. And then Rakdos Transmogrify, Jund Sacrifice. Is this like Fable? Like what is this? Like what is the red card here that's like causing red to be so good in Pioneer?
It's mostly Fable. Like I think it's a combination of like, so Fable's the biggest one, but then it's also the second best color behind black at having cheap removal like Torch the Tower, which is really important against
Which
a lot
you
of the
need.
aggro decks. So I think it's a combination of Fable gives you the engine and then you get the cheap removal that lets you stay alive against aggro. Overall though, I think black is still the number 1 color if you look at the overall meta of Pioneer. And it's been really interesting because a month ago, they targeted Rakdos with a banning. Like one of the big issues in Pioneer was Rakdos vampires dominating the format and just being a huge percentage of the meta. So Wizards banned Sorin to get rid of this combo and not allow Rakdos to be as good. And this is one of the most successful bannings, I think, that I have ever seen. Because what ended up happening is Rakdos is still really good. If you look at the top 8 decks of this tournament, the top 2 actually were both Rakdos decks. And there's another Rakdos deck in the top 8. So there were 3 Rakdos decks in the top 8, but they're all incredibly different decks. One of them's this Rakdos Agatha Soul Cauldron combo deck. One of them's a Rakdos Transmogrify deck trying to put like a Valgavoth type stuff or a Troxus into play. And then one of them's a straight up like prowessy aggro deck. So instead of Rakdos being, if you want to play these colors, the best thing to do is just Sorin a Vein Ripper, and that's what every Rakdos deck was. Now we have Rakdos still being very playable, but it's split up between all these different sub-archetypes. So I feel like the bannings we had for Pioneer were just like so perfect. They absolutely nailed it with these bannings, and now the reward is Pioneer is in a really, really spectacular place. So Richard, why don't, for the people who haven't seen this, what is a quick rundown of the top 8 of this event? What are we actually looking at from the regional championships?
Let me pull it up, Seth.
No, sorry to put you
All
on
right.
the spot.
Rakdos Cauldron, number 1. Apparently there's a Tree of Perdition here, which we'll get into for a second.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand. And then Rakdos Transmogrify, Enigmatic Incarnation, Rakdos Aggro, Is It Phoenix, Selesnya Company, Is It Phoenix, and then Azorius Lotus Field. So I know of all these decks. I know what a Cauldron is. But what is Tree of Perdition and why is it here? And what is the main combo?
Oh, that deck is so cool. So we
This
actually
is so
played this
sick.
deck like a couple months ago on the YouTube channel before it broke out on the tournament stage when I thought it was just like this meme against the odds deck. But the goal of this deck is you're trying to give a much smaller creature Tree of Perdition's ability. with the help of Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So if you don't know Tree of Perdition, its ability is you tap and exchange its toughness, which is normally 13, with your opponent's life total. The trick here is you can use Agatha's Soul Cauldron to give a very small creature, like a Voldaren Thrill Seeker, or a Fear of Missing Out, or a Blood Tithe Harvester, Tree's ability, and then you just tap that creature and put your opponent to like 2 life. The most direct combo kill is Thrill Seeker. If you do this with Thrill Seeker, you can tap it to put your opponent down to like 3 life and then sack it to deal the other 3 and just win the game on the spot. So basically that's the goal of the deck, is get the Tree of Perdition in the graveyard, exile it with Soul Cauldron, and then just put your opponent from 20 down to like 3 by tapping whatever creature you give its ability to, and then finish off the game somehow with a Thrill Seeker or an attack or something.
It's got Marvin also. Murderous Mimic, my little doll, my creepy guy.
So
that card is so sweet.
It is
Wait,
very
how do you
sweet. I
win through
actually
graveyard hate?
that is the idea of Marvin, actually. So I watched, they did a deck tag with, I believe it was Corey Lack who won the tournament, or it was another player and I'm misremembering, but on the same deck. And they basically said Marvin actually kind of sucks in the deck, but they view it as like a necessary evil to beat the graveyard hate, because Marvin has all the activated abilities of creatures on the battlefield. So you can just cast a Marvin, cast a tree, tap the Marvin with Tree's ability, put your opponent down to 2. So that's basically their attempt at beating graveyard hate. Although apparently, I mean, it must be doing a pretty good job of it, because this just won the entire tournament, going 16-2 through 18 rounds of Magic, which is a very impressive performance. I would have never, if you had told me 2 years ago that we'd be winning tournaments with Tree of Perdition, I would have laughed in your face. There is no way I would have thought that was a real thing. And now it's happening. It's happening. But the deck is super cool. Also,
what's new about these? Are old pieces. These are old pieces, right? Like, it's just the Marvin key of fighting graveyard, because Soul Cauldron and Tree of Perdition are quite old, right?
So this deck showed up before
Wilds of Eldraine is not that old. Okay, I mean, all right, calm down.
Set, okay, it's not even last 2 sets, right? This is several sets removed, right?
I think it's one of those decks that people just took a while to put together. When you think about like Amulet Titan in Modern or something, like it's one of those things where it's just, when you first hear, I'm going to put Tree of Perdition under my Agatha Soul Cauldron, you think, oh, that's like some silly casual thing. But it turns out that it's actually like a pretty effective way to win a game.
You also got, okay, so there is another thing, the FOMO, fear of missing out. There's 4 copies of that in the main deck.
FOMO's nice. It's really, so it's not really like necessary for the combo, but it's just like an on-curve creature that lets you fill your graveyard. It's the new best version of the, I'm going to discard a card and draw a card, but like the Delirium attacking ability, that doesn't really matter. Like, I guess there's some weird situation where it can come up, but you're not really built around the like extra combat step ability. So that was the deck that won the tournament. Number 2 is another like, I guess, new deck with old pieces, which is Rakdos Transmogrify, which is basically trying to use Transmogrify to put in this case, a Trox into play. There were 2 different versions. There was one that was like trying to put Velgavoth into play, another one trying to put a Trox into play. The one that finished second was fully in on the Atraxa plan, just to refill the hand, which I think is interesting. There's kind of a debate over whether Velgavoth was going to be good enough as like a cheat into play target. What do you guys think about that? Does this settle that? Is Atraxa just better than Velgavoth at this point?
I mean, I'm not surprised. Isn't that kind of just hasn't that always been the case? Like, was there ever a debate there? I mean, I do think that Velgavoth kind of serves a little bit of a different purpose. Whereas I think Atraxa is just so good at refilling your hand. It's like, once it hits the board, who cares if they answer it, right?
You get that immediate value right away. So even if it dies, you're like, whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter.
I mean,
the other,
if it's the reanimation target in all the older formats, chances are it's still like one of the best reanimation targets here. You can get around the restriction, but the restriction's not that hard. So yeah, it's no surprise. But it's interesting that we have another unfair deck at number 2 here, right? Like, one thing I notice here is that Pioneer is the new Modern, in the sense that it's all like kind of unfair decks, and then the fair decks are trying to fight. Whereas when Pioneer first launched, it was like more of a fair battle, right? Like way back in the day. But over time, we've gotten all these like cool combos to pull off, because number 3 is also a combo deck. So that's kind of interesting.
I think the
So-
deck in the... Oh, go ahead, Crib.
Number 3, if you want to talk about that,
Mm.
I am curious. Like, so when we initially talked about at the beginning of Duskmorn, right? Like we were talking about, well, what do the overlords do, right? For Pioneer and how busted they would be in the enigmatic deck. I thought that it wouldn't be that major. I thought the enigmatic like card is just kind of like a cute pod deck and trying to replicate
that's pod
that.
for enchantments, right? But
Yeah,
well, you
yeah.
don't
So-
activate it; it's end step, right? But pod for enchantments,
Yeah.
is Simic.
You sack an enchantment, you get to tutor through your deck, right? So the overlords actually do a lot in the deck. And I don't know. I mean, this deck still seems very fair. Why is this a combo deck? I mean, I get it. It looks good.
It's technically fair, but you're like overlording birthing pods. Like you're cheating on your fair plays. So yes, it's
That's more reanimator than it
okay.
is.
So
like,
so
like
was pod into Kiki combo a fair deck or a combo deck?
I think that it was a
Right?
fair deck with a combo in it.
So this
Yeah.
doesn't really have a
Yes,
combo like old pod did, right? Couldn't pod like go into an actual game-ending combo, like some sort
Yeah.
of loop that would end the game? This doesn't really have a loop. This is more like, I don't know, I'm going to cheat a Titan of Industry into play, which I guess makes it a little, I guess Reanimator, like a show and tell deck is
yeah.
maybe the
Yeah.
closest combo comparison. Like
It
I'm
doesn't
going to jump
technically
the
win,
curve.
but you get an overwhelming advantage when you do the thing, right? And do the thing does not look
Yeah.
fair, right?
Yep.
Like you kind of need to stuff this, right? So it's close to Reanimator, but it's like pod in that if you don't cheese someone out, you just grind them into the ground with this thing. And like if they somehow disassemble your combo, you just go value plays on curve and like beat them down. So yeah, maybe it's not right to call this a combo deck, but I don't know if I would call this a fair deck either, right? It's some kind of
It's-
hybrid, right?
Yeah,
Feels fair to me.
I mean,
don't know,
it's what
man.
fair looks like in 2024, right? This is what all fair decks look like, right? They cheat on something.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be able to have a way to close out the game, right? I think the best example of this is a deck that just missed the top 8. Now, in 10th place, there's Mono Black Midrange, which sounds like the fairest deck of all, right? You're playing all your Fatal Pushes and Thought Seizes and Reckoner Bank Busters and just trying to like do your Mono Black stuff, but it's actually an Unstoppable Slasher Bloodletter of Akhlazot's combo deck where you get in the one tack
So
with the Slasher and just like kill your opponent. So even the like fairest deck in this tournament, it actually does kind of have this combo kill built in where sometimes you just go turn 3 Slasher, turn 4 Bloodletter, and your opponent can't stop it, and you just like win the game on the spot. So even the fair decks do have some sort of like really powerful, I guess that's a direct combo, but it has some sort of like combo or nut draw or free win aspect. There's not too many decks that are successful in a format like Pioneer or Modern that don't have like their best draw being very game ending very quickly.
It's called scam, Seth.
I mean,
It is.
You get the right
everything's-
combination of cards, you scam a win from your opponent. Now that used to
Although-
be grief, combo, but all these fair decks have some kind of scam win con where you like have a tap land or you brick on removal and you just insta die, right?
There is one exception. In 6th place,
yeah.
Zevin Faust, Selesnya Company.
Yeah.
It is the
There's no
fair- I don't
scam in
know how
here?
this person.
No
They're-
way.
They're
It's a
playing
company
Enduring
deck without a
Innocence.
combo?
They're playing 4 Enduring Innocence just to try to draw the cards as they put their 2/2s into play, and hopefully they can grind you out eventually. And they, I don't know how
I
this
saw
deck
that
made it
deck
to the
list.
top 8. Like it looks like a good company deck. It just looks so fair compared to
This is
like
the fairest
I'm
thing
gonna
I've seen
cheat
in my life,
Vel'Kovoth
guys.
into play. I'm gonna combo you with the Unstoppable Slasher. And there's like Llanowar into Enduring Innocence. Like
There really
Tag
is no
like that
combo
first you
in
draw a
here.
card.
Kellen,
there's
Werewolf,
No,
Bodyguard.
nothing.
Check it too.
nothing.
If you they've got Aven Interrupters in there. Like, yeah, dude. I looked at this list. I'm like, this is an honest deck list.
Oh,
And it's like kind of trying to just play a bunch of hate bears.
and it looks like a modern deck from like 10 years ago. This looks like when Coco first came out and people were like building Coco decks. This looks like what Coco decks used to look like when they were a thing. But I don't know, maybe Coco's back. That's a really good performance. Like in a tournament this big, making the top 8's a huge accomplishment. Anyone who made the top 8 in this event, like, that is a massive performance. I think the other exciting part is there was a big concern that Is It Phoenix was just going to be too good. Like, back when we were talking about the bannings a month ago, people were very much like, maybe we just got to be in Treasure Cruise because Phoenix might just be the S tier deck in the format. It turns out, though, based on all the data we have from Moto and also from these big tournaments, Phoenix is just fine. If you look at the win rates, Frank Carson posted the win rates. It was like 50.8%, like nothing breaking at all. So I feel like Pioneer just like ended up in a amazingly good place. So if you've been on the fence about trying Pioneer or trying Explore on Magic Arena, I would definitely recommend it because I think the format's in maybe the best place it's been in a long, long time. But anything else stand out from these deck lists? I actually want to ask you, Crib. So going into the tournament, Blue-White Control was the most played deck in the field. And Blue-White Control, it did fine. Win rate rise, I think it was like 53% or something. It like was almost 54%. So it did well by win rate. What do you think of this Control deck? It got one person into the top 8 with the Lotus Field build, which they lumped in with Blue-White Control. What's your take on this style of Control in Pioneer?
Welcome to the draw bracket, baby. We're back. Yo, this is so sick, dude. Like, I love it. I also love seeing how many people drew their games, and I'm like, yeah, I want that. I want to play that
50% win rate, but 40% draw rate. So it's actually pretty good. 108. That was my tournament run, guys.
It reminds me of the good days, right? I remember that my friends called it the Crim bracket. I think it was like a regional or some kind of GP, and I was 003.
Chris, you get paired against other 003s, right? So at the end of the day, you guys it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where you just end up in control mirrors and continue the streak.
Chris Patello of Cat Pack fame from forever ago almost pulled it off. After round 13, he was 10-0-3 with Blue-White Control, and they thought he might be able to draw his way into the tournament. Unfortunately, ended 10-1-4 draws in 32nd place. So yeah, there were a lot of draws going around with these control decks.
That's the hero. That player had a support system around them where they were bringing them food, drinks in between rounds. That person did not go get any battle time.
Four draws.
I do think the deck is sweet. I do not know about the Lotus Field version. I think some people still feel like that's the good version of Control if you're going to play it in Pioneer. But I despise Lotus Field, and I still want this card banned. I'm just saying. But, I mean, it's nice. It's nice to cheat on mana, right? You can't play that fair of a deck. And as Richard mentioned, there's a lot of unfair nonsense, right? That's running around. So I do think you need something to kind of boost your resources, and being able to go strict Proctor and then get a burst of 3 mana. That helps. That's where if you look at the deck list, it's got 4 farewells, 4 of them.
It is.
So
it is all in.
Yeah, it's all in on the Lotus Field, and I think that's one way you could play it, and I think it's fine. I just despise Lotus Field, so I don't play it. I think it's pretty solid.
I wonder if it's better overall than a more traditional Blue-White Control build. I think the idea is probably what we were talking about before, to give your control deck that free win draw where sometimes you just have like 6 mana and your opponent has like 2 mana and you stick a Teferi and you win the game. But it does come with a cost of like having to play strict Proctors, which aren't especially good in a control deck most of the time.
You
like,
lose no more lies.
Yeah, you got to make some concessions to playing those cards. So I'm really not sure like what's better overall. It seems like there was a split that some people did well with the Lotus Field versions and other people did really well and drew. I think the Lotus Field did get less draws. That might be one of the upsides. You're more likely to have your games actually come to a conclusion if you're playing Lotus Field. But yeah, people did well with both versions of that deck.
There is a version of the deck that doesn't have Lotus Field, like 12th place, and that one, they've got a hot set of spells here. Okay, I want you to hear this. Okay, they got some Misers, and I love my singletons. Okay, so this person's got 1 Narset, right? But then here's the hot spell: They got a rewind, baby. They got a rewind in their list, and I love that. They've got 2 hollowed moonlights, 1 3 steps ahead, 1 quick study, and then a bunch of miser lands. Oh, I love seeing a control deck with 1s and 2s all over the place. So 12th place, Daniel Weiser, you got it. You understood the assignment. I like that build.
It's like, I only have my commander deck here. Can I enter the tournament?
Yeah. I brought my Azorius commander deck, and so I chopped it by 40 cards.
There was also, this made me think of you, Krim, and I think it fell off towards day 2, but I think round 4 or 5 on day 1, there was a 4-0 player playing ninjas in Pioneer with the new Kaido. It was a full-on like Kaido ninja deck, and Kaido actually looked so good. So they ended up not making the top 8 or anything in the end, but they started off really well, and it turns out that Kaido, they had multiple emblems going, and all their little like janky ninjutsu ninjas were like just massive, and it actually looked really impressive. So I hadn't really considered the possibility of maybe Kaido could be good in Pioneer, but now I kind of want to try Pioneer Ninjas because that deck looked really sweet.
Like, wait. Not rogues, right?
Oh, no. This is Silver Fur Master and like 1,000-year, whatever, the 1-drop. Like, it was full on ninjas with Kaido, with Ornithopter to ninjutsu off of. Yeah, but like straight up full on ninja deck.
Now that person gets it.
Yeah, it was sweet.
I gotta find this list because the only other list I knew of that looked very sweet was Reed Duke's Dimir control list. Did you see that list? That list was solid.
Yep. Reed Duke was in round 1 of the whole tournament in the feature batch, and it was the most, like, he got in exact damage on turn 5 of turns because he fired up his Mutavault. It was like the most like control player Reed Duke in like just doing his thing game. But yeah, his list looked super sweet too. I'm trying to find the ninjas list for you, but I'm not sure. There's so many players in this tournament. I don't remember the person's name, but I'll have to find it for you later. But there's definitely a ninja deck that did well
Send
early.
me that list.
Yeah.
I need that ninjas list.
So Pioneer, I think, in a really good spot. But there's other formats in Magic, and I know one you've been playing a decent amount recently, Richard, is Modern. So Modern's the other format where we had a big round of bannings about a month ago, a little over a month now, with Grief being banned, with Nadu being banned. When I look at the metagame page, I'm kind of like, I don't know if these bannings, like, I think they were necessary, but I don't know if they really fixed Modern. Like, if you look at the last 7 days, Boros Energy is like 30% of the meta. The One Ring is up to, last I checked, 54% of decks in Modern, which is kind of a mind-blowing amount of play that card's seeing. But what do you think, Richard? Where is Modern at right now, a month post bannings?
I didn't see any of this, Seth. So, okay. Here's a story. You know, I was grinding limited to play standard on Arena, right? And after drafting Screaming Nemesis for like the 3rd or 4th time and just obliterating my opponent, I'm like, this is Jundable. This is what's going to carry Tarmogoyf to the top of Modern. So that
card is the truth.
I built a Jund deck with Screaming Nemesis, and the whole idea was to just dunk on Boros Energy. You know, like Boros Energy top deck, One Ring. Don't worry, we put in some questing beasts, right? We fire off some lightning bolts on our Screaming Nemesis. You know, they want to remove it. They can't gain life. Perfect. Play 2 or 3 leagues. Zero Boros Energy. So although that deck is the top of the metagame. Now the metagame takes only higher, what do you call it? Like higher level tournaments into play. So like the challenges and premier events on Moto, right? It ignores league data. But when we play Modern, we usually play leagues, and people just play whatever the heck they want in those leagues. So the most annoying thing for me was like after 12 matches, it was like 12 different decks of like unfair ways to kill you with an assortment of random Modern cards, right? And I was like, wow, this is kind of annoying. I can't even metagame anything. Like, there's no sideboard building. Like, you know, you play some Living End, you put in some ley lines, and then for the next 4 matches, you get like frogged to death or whatever, right? Like, you know, you don't see a single graveyard deck, right? So I don't know. The data says the One Ring is everywhere. I didn't actually see that many One Rings. Part of the problem is Boros Energy is the most played deck, and the One Ring is critical to that deck, so that kind of pumps the number. But just like Moto League data, I don't see it. I don't see it, right? And the data won't tell you anything because the lists are curated, right? So like they show you
Yeah.
like a deck of every archetype, but it certainly felt like that. I just played like every deck imaginable in Modern, and there's a lot of weird, janky, probably tier 2 or tier 3 combo decks that will kill you on turn 3 anyway, right? Like you know, so I don't know what to make of
So
this actually.
So you would say your experience grinding leagues is Modern is more diverse than the metagame page would make it look, you think? Like at least that was your experience over a few leagues?
Yeah, it's the question of, do you optimize for the top end or the pros, right? I am 100% certain if you join a challenge, you're going to see nothing but one rings and Boros Energy, right? Because that is
Right.
probably the best deck in the format, and you're going to see that. But you know, when you just play a random league, it seems pretty diverse. So it's the classic video game problem of, do you optimize for the pros or do you optimize for the normal folk? Like when you go to FNM Modern, is it all Boros Energy or is it just random assortment? That I'm unsure of, but it didn't seem as bad as the numbers would suggest when I played.
So let me ask you the most
Richard,
important question. Oh, go ahead, Grim.
I wanted to ask you because so I've seen the buzz is that Screaming Nemesis is legitimately the truth, the end all of Boros Energy, right? Like it is the best card to play against them. Is the shutting off the life gain that good? Is the goal to just like
I would tell you, Krim, if I played a single Boros Energy match.
I guess, yeah.
But I did not.
Yeah,
but I will tell you what I cooked up though. You see, here's the so current list. It's not Jund anymore. It's simply just domain deck, right? But here was the intent, right? Screaming Nemesis plus insult to injury. Now, insult to injury prevents damage prevention, right? So that turns off the one ring, but it also doubles sources of damage. So then you fire off a 5 damage spell onto your Screaming Nemesis. It hits your Screaming Nemesis for 10. That 10 goes to your opponent's face, doubles again, 20. Insta-kill, right? And there's quite a few cards. So Unholy Heat will do 6 to Screaming Nemesis. That's 24 to your opponent's face. The Galvanic Discharge, if it's your second one, you can charge that baby up to 5. Even a Lightning Bolt does 12. Screaming Nemesis itself does 6. Like that's usually lethal. So that is the scam I'm running. And if that fails, I just do normal domain stuff, which also includes insult to injury, tribal flames, right? That's like a 10 bringer to the face, right? And then, you know, if that really fails, I'm just hitting you with Kavus. I'm just hitting you with 5/5 trample Kavus, and Tarmogoyf got cut. I had to put in the brawler. I was too hard to get Delirium. But yeah, so that is my new scam deck. It's pretty good. It's pretty funny.
Have you
just getting people with it?
Have you got some combo kills? Have you done the like Screaming Nemesis 20 damage thing? Yes. Oh, that
unfortunately, my opponent.
Sweet.
Most of the time, my opponent's at like 8 or something, and I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna show you 20 damage to your face. You go to -16. But the insult to injury is like really, really strong, right? Because they one ring, you insult injury, you hit them with like a 5/5, that's 10 damage. Usually they're dead, right? If you have any kind of board, that usually kills them. So it's kind of hilarious. And I like it. This is the new way to enjoy Modern. You just see how many people you can scam because they're like, oh, you're like a fair deck or something, right? Let me do this. And I'm like, nope, I'm a combo deck. I'm a turn 4 combo deck if it's uninterrupted, right? So
Splinter Twin. You're actually just a Splinter Twin deck,
is the way, right? Like every deck is some scam deck. And then if you somehow sell out to stop the scam, you die to their like value of like mid-range pile, right? Like Legacy Reanimator is the perfect example of that. It's not even, I don't even know if you would call it Reanimator anymore, right? It's like Demir Delver or something, right? With the Reanimator scam kill, right? Like it's a nice tempo deck, it's a nice control-y deck, and then if you're not paying attention, you just get like scammed comboed out of the game.
Yeah, here's an Atraxa, here's an Archon.
That's all of Modern. Apparently, it's Pioneer 2. It is the way of Magic in 2024. So I'm all for new scam combos.
Yeah, I think you just gotta embrace it. I think that's what I'm coming around to in Modern is like, I guess I just gotta embrace where the format's at now and try to make the best of the scamming of in every deck. I don't know. It's just so different than it was in the past that I'm like, oh,
Splinter
like
Twin,
everything.
Splinter Twin was the OG. Splinter Twin was the one that pioneered this, right? And it's good. And
It is.
I really want to take that Coco deck from Pioneer into Modern to see if that was like the fairest thing I've ever seen. And it's like playing real Magic, right? It's like I'm gonna 1-for-1 you, and my cards are better, and I don't need no scam to beat you, right? Like here we go, right? I'm gonna honestly beat you with 2/2s until you die, and it's gonna work. So I tried that with Tarmogoyf. It did not work. Thoughtseizes is a bad card. Tarmogoyf's a bad card. Liliana of the Veil's a bad card. So yeah, we're just we're just insult to injury. That's the scam.
I'm gonna have to try some insult to injury because that does
It's
sound
good. I'm convinced this is a good deck, by the way. We're all memeing here, but I'm convinced this is like a legit deck somewhere. We just gotta assemble the right build. Currently, I'm running the Flare as well, so I can scam you by copying Tribal Flames or insult to injury. Right?
Do you have enough
like I'm convinced this is a good deck because if you take all my scam, I'm like, this is still just a like Gruul domain deck, which is like pretty decent. Like it's not bad, right? So. There's gonna be a build here.
There's a 1-mana Tarmogoyf. It's called for that deck. It's called Wild Nacatl. Are you bringing that in too?
No, because I can't sack it to Flare of Duplication.
That's so true.
Do you think it's worth running? You weren't running Leyline of the guild pack, right? At least last time I saw the list. Do you think it's worth running Leyline Scion Draco as like a backup scam, and it makes all your creatures red for Flare?
The scam to the deck, but then it's too much because
then you're an actual scam.
It's still kind of a combo deck, right? You still need like a Screaming Nemesis, you still need Insult Injury and the burn spell. So once you start putting in things that don't win the game by themselves, like Leyline, it doesn't help. Right, and then if you do that, you're tempted to put in Leyline Binding and like play a fairer game. So I didn't do it, but the Scion crossed my mind because now I can sack anything to Flare of Duplication, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give it a try. The list does sound really cool, and Screaming Nemesis does seem really well positioned if Boros Energy actually is that heavily played. So that's modern. Any other modern thoughts before we move on to standard, perhaps? So standard. How are you feeling about standard, Grim? I know you and me, I think, play the most standard. How are you feeling about standard now that we're a couple months into this format almost? So we're gonna have foundations coming in another month and a half. So we're gonna get a little shake up then. I would say overall, this standard is one of my favorites in a long time. I think the standard format is so good. I will say, I think that Leyline is probably going to have to go. The more I run into the Leyline deck, the more I'm like, even if this deck isn't too good, it's just not something we want to. I don't think we want standard to have the ability to kill this quickly. Like, I think it's just like a turn too fast for what would be acceptable, considering like how good it is. Because it's like currently the most played deck in best of 3 and the most played deck in best of 1 is built around Leyline. But outside of that, I think the standard is like kind of amazing. But what do you think about the format, Krim?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that this deck needs an aggressive deck. We did spend a lot of time making fun of aggressive decks. Like, haha, red, what are you going to do? Play an aggro deck? That's impossible. It'll never get anywhere. So I think it's just, right now, I guess I haven't felt the pure misery yet when I lose to a Leyline. Like, if I get my kick teeth in, it's like, or my teeth kicked in, it's like, all right, word. Like, I don't know. I mean, I do think the Leyline is very strong, right? It's very strong, but I'm not sure. Like, okay, so you ban it. You know what? There's no downside to banning it, really. All you're doing is just preventing a player from killing you on turn 2, which I get, which is pretty good.
People play the
right?
exact same deck. Like, I think you could just take out the Leylines and add in 4 more whatevers, creatures or pump spells, and your deck would still be fine. Like, I don't think it's really going to hurt people too much.
Yeah, I also, the card's like, what, $3? So if you're like you're factoring that in, it's like not too big of a loss anyway. So yeah, you know what? I could see them banning it, but maybe if they ban it, like it wouldn't happen for like another month or 2. I still am trying. I'm enjoying it right now, like playing against it, but that's because I am playing the most narrow deck of all time in best of 1.
What are you playing in best of 1?
Oh, I'm playing mono white. I'm playing Metropolis Reformers. I'm playing every form of 1 mana interaction I can find, and I am only beating red. I have like 100% win rate against red. Literally cannot win a game against anybody else though. So, but since there's actually so many red players, I'll tell you this right now: the prime hours, the peak hours of red gamers are right before bed. And usually around lunchtime. Here's the explanation. Okay,
you're sweaty when you optimize when you play your games, so you can hit the right players.
Let me give you the pocket of the hours. Red gamers want to play quick magic before bed. So what do they want to do, right? Like they're gonna play red.
That makes sense.
I have some loose time. Kids are asleep. All of that stuff. I'm gonna go play some magic. That's when you drag them into a 2-hour game in best of 1 for 1 pip, and you're like, no, you're locked in here with me, okay? Like
this is why you always instant concede against Grim. No matter you see him, you're like, look,
just
it's not worth my time. I'm trying to play a quick game to get my quest done for the day. Here he is, like dragging out the game. Like, are you gonna attack me, bro? Sorry, I only have a 99% chance to win. We gotta drag it out a little more. Hold on. Let me make sure we lock down the game completely.
Let me ask you this, Richard. Why not spend more time winning? Right? Why go to the next game when you could just spend more time winning? Like that's what I'm saying. So other than that, though, like best of 3, I'm playing blue-white, and I see the deck. It's good. It still torches me, like sometimes, right, if I don't have the removal. But I don't know. I mean, I felt like I've done like quite decently against it in best of 3. I'm surprised that it's like cooking that hard in best of 3, right?
Yeah, I was surprised it's that good in best of 3 too, but it turns out dead on turn 2 is dead on turn 2. No matter if best of 3, best of 1, if they get you, they get you. And there's like some appeal to that. I think the deck, I'm actually tempted to just like take that deck to modern or something. Like I think that's like the kind of standard deck it's got enough of the like scam in it that I think you could probably play that in a modern league. And not that you'd 5-0, but I think you could definitely pick up a decent amount of wins just by like people not being prepared for it. It's harder in modern because you got solitudes and more free interaction, but I think like the kills fast enough that this is a standard budget deck that you could almost like play in modern with a straight face and get away with it. So I might have to try that. That could be a funny video if we can win some games with it.
Surveil land players.
Get them.
Surveil land. Oh no. Gotta vault the 3 because I run tap lands,
Did you? What do you think, Grim? I want to ask you about standard. Pornoculus was one of the big financial increases this week, where it like doubled up in price. That was a card that during spoiler season, I was pretty skeptical of, honestly, having to exile 6 cards from the graveyard. But it turns out I've seen it in standard quite a bit in the Azorius deck. It's showing up a lot in Pioneer, actually, in decks like Greasefang decks, and it even shows up in some Murktide decks in Modern. Do you think that card's actually like just was underrated and is going to end up being a staple? Like, what do you think the future of Oculus is?
I think the card, as I've played with it now, right? It's amazing in like the 1v1 format, but it's even better in like multiplayer formats as well. So like it's good in Commander, so it's good in 1v1. I think this is a card that'll be solid for quite some time. I thought the idea of like helping hand, getting the Oculus back was like this cute interaction, but it's pretty good. Like it's actually really good. And if they do not answer it, it's almost over. And usually if the opponent, like they're trying to do their game plan in this standard, the turn where they would answer it, that would require them to essentially skip their turn. And on top of that, like kind of like lose a lot of tempo where you'll just then reanimate it again, right? So I think the card is good. I thought it was a cute idea to bring back with like the helping hand cards, but it's solid. It kind of plays like the deck kind of feels like Delver when it was good.
Yep.
Right? It's this blue-white, low-to-the-ground deck. And you don't really care if you lose it. You care if it gets exiled, but you don't really care if you lose it. Everything in your deck is cheap. So between that, Mentor, and like maybe they've replaced Jin. It's like maybe there's 1 or 2 Jins here and there, but the deck is sweet. It plays like blue-white Delver back in Innistrad, like original Innistrad without the Rune Chanter's Pike.
And all the helping hand effects make it so hard to deal with because it's like you kill the eye after it already manifest red and made a 2/2, and then they just get it back for 1 mana the next turn. You're like, why am I? You really need like Graveyard Hate or Exile Removal to deal with it. So yeah, it's kind of impressed me. Have you seen it in Modern at all, Richard? Have you seen any Oculuses? I know it's on the metagame
is there
page
one?
that people are trying it in Murktide decks. So there's people that have like 5-0'd with it in Murktide, but I don't know if it's really like catching on and going to be a real thing or just someone trying out the new cards.
Seems too cute. See, like we have like 1 mana like 8/8s or 2 mana 8/8 flyings and stuff in the format. It is funny though, because if you actually pull it off, you can manifest dread another one, right? So then if they deal with the original one, you can flip up the new one. But in Modern, like if you're gonna go through this hassle of reanimating things, this is like too weak, right? Like it's not scammy enough for for what we're doing. But I'm interested to see a list because this did win me a couple drafts, right? The exact
you
reanimate this or you manifest dread it. It's like hilarious, right? Casting it the real way is a little difficult and limited, so I'm happy it's translated into an actual 60 card format.
I think the fact that the manifest dread mechanic also just putting the card into the graveyard.
Use the graveyard to cast it.
Yeah, like this card is good, and it kind of feels the next one. And also, I could see where that has its benefits, right? Like in Modern, you want stuff in the yard anyways. Pioneer, you see people jamming it for those reasons. It's easy to fill up your yard again, and you just do some more nonsense. So this deck really does cave to like Graveyard Hate though. Like if you see a rip, like it's over, right? Like you can't play this card, and like half of your deck is blank.
It's just a matter of like, are enough people playing those cards? I think you can get away with it right now because we do have Rest in Peace, we do have Leyline of the Void, so there is like the best Graveyard Hate available in Magic exists in Standard now.
But that's so wild to me that you just said rip Leyline of the Void. All these cards are in Standard.
Yeah,
too.
they're in Standard right now.
Going all the way back.
Yeah. So yeah, but people don't play them super heavily, so you can kind of get away with it at the moment. But if people ever decide to start hating on it, it might look a little different. One other thing I want to mention, and I know we're not really talking too much Commander because we've done it the last couple weeks, but have you guys seen all the banned in Commander cards getting like super bought out? People are going like ham. Like Primeval Titan up 368% to $23. Coalition Victory up 300%. Biorhythm, Armageddon. People are buying out Armageddon because they put it on their little bracket thing as a 4, which apparently makes people think they can play Armageddon now. Sway of the Stars. What do you think of this? Like, are people just like being overly optimistic? Do you actually think there's a realistic chance that they're going to come back with their ban list reeval and going to be like Primeval Titan, Paradox Engine, Coalition Victory, all these cards are off the ban list? That seems like a long shot to me. Like, is it just foolishness to be buying out these cards right now?
I mean, like, which one's weird? So Coalition, there's a bunch of safe, stupid cards like that can come back. So I can understand the intent behind buying those out. But like, Armageddon is currently legal, so that's weird. And like, B, like they're never putting Primetime back in the format, like 0 chance, right? So they'll seem misguided, but again, it's like every other scam. Doesn't need to make sense, right? What you need is to find the next sucker after you, right? So you may have 0 faith of anything about Armageddon, right? But if you believe that next week more people will hear of this news and buy up Armageddons, then you buy your Armageddons and then you unload them and then call it a day, right? With 0 faith that these are unbanned. So they may actually strictly be the most MTG finance plays ever. Because I think if you just look at it for a second, no one is going to be like, well, Armageddon's going to be meta next week, so we better buy them out. I don't think so, right? But I do believe that some people will just buy every single card in tier bracket 4. Therefore, I'll buy Armageddons, unload to those people, and like run away before something bad happens, right? So that, my friend, is called a bubble, by the way. So then if you don't time this correctly, you may be holding the cards after the bubble is popped, and then you're just holding the bag, right? So that is that. I would not recommend this, but I think that's the play, right? There's no way Armageddon comes back, right? Like no way. Like that's somehow meta.
I don't know. Do you think there's some world, Crim, where Wizards like doing that bracket thing makes Armageddon more acceptable for at least some group of players? Like, do you think explicitly saying like Armageddon's a level 4 card, maybe that means it sees more play, because before it was just thought of as completely unacceptable, but now that's kind of saying for this certain group or certain like power level, it is acceptable. Do you think there's a chance that actually we see an increase in Armageddon seeing playing Commander because of assuming the bracket system goes the way it looks like at the moment?
I mean, okay, what is the one thing we've talked about on the Commander side of our podcast? And it's that lands need to be interacted with more, right? And I think that now if you tell me that Armageddon is a 4, that now means that, hey, this is a high-powered bracket, right? Like this is going to be like just high-powered nonsense. So yeah, like I could see people just being, like saying it's up there as a 4, and if that's the case, then my deck is a 4. Like,
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see that being a thing, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, if someone blows up my lands, I'm like, yo, hey, I get it, dude. The green,
let me
the
check
green decks are out
check
there.
your Card Kingdom history. How many Armageddons do you have in there? we got to do a fact check real quick here.
Yeah, like on top of that, I'm totally okay. But if you need any copies, apparently,
So maybe some people will build a deck, but I 100% guarantee you their playgroup will shut them down immediately. Right after the
Yeah.
first
Well,
Armageddon goes off, like, get out of here, dude. We don't want you here, right? So this will self-police itself quite quickly, and at CDH levels, the card sucks, right? So
Yeah,
like
but
there's no like, oh, this is correct, but like whatever, right? Like in the highest levels, the card actually is not good. So there's no way it's gonna self-police its way back out. Like if you slam down an Armageddon, you're gonna get kicked out of your playgroup. Regardless, you're like, well, actually, bracket 4, guys, bracket 4.
Yeah,
I have this quote from Gavin, bracket 4, right? They're not gonna kick you out, right?
I mean, maybe like if you're all playing whatever level 4 ends up being, maybe people would have fun with that. Like maybe there's enough free counters and stuff that I don't know. Like you said, it's not that good in CDH. If level 4 ends up being the equivalent of like whatever casual CDH is, maybe it would be okay there. But boy, I just don't think people are going to enjoy playing against it. It's still going to be a feel bad.
yeah,
could-
like it could lead to feel bads, but I think the thing here is you're going in with the mindset that this is high-powered casual.
Right. So you could
Right, if you're
expect
going-
Winter Orb or any of those things that are level 4s and you shouldn't play at lower levels. So you're going to go into it expecting that that's a possibility.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
like again, these cards, I like that now there's just a definitive list that kind of gives me like, okay, an idea of where these archetypes rank, right? Like, and it's like, yeah, I know that that's not the goal, like to like have it so that, bad actors can, pub stomp people. But
Right.
the difference here is like, if you go out to a pod 4, that's casual high powered, not CDH. So if you're going into that and like, oh, well, I'm pretty much a level 4 deck, but you're clearly playing a CDH deck, that's a different story. But casual doesn't mean you can't play powerful cards. And I think these powerful cards are fine if everyone is also playing powerful cards. So if I go into a 4, I'm going to expect nonsense. And some of those times, that nonsense could be my lands getting blown up. I'm not really going to be mad about that. And because it's nice to play at a bracket where I can actually punish green players.
I would just say on these cards, I wouldn't buy them now. Like I can kind of get the impulse
I don't know about
of
buying.
Sway of the Stars being like $1 or Primeval Titan being $2, and you're being like, these cards are super cheap. I don't know. Maybe they unban them someday. I might as well pick up a few copies. But with Primeval Titan at $20 or like Biorhythm at $7, Coalition Victory at $7, if they don't get unbanned, they're dropping back down to $1. So I would not be buying out those cards at $5, $7, $10. Like maybe at $1, it's worth it just to like take a chance on the, who knows, maybe it works out. But at these prices, I would not be buying the abandoned commander cards. I would just wait and see what happens, just chill out a little bit. But anyway, I think it's time for something we haven't done in 2 months now. Fishmail. It is Fishmail time. Richard, we've been waiting and waiting. Get us a Fishmail.
If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. I'll give you a meta question. We'll do 2 questions today. A meta question. Conman AU. If answering Fishmail is like the RC announcing bans, does answering this question means WotC takes over the podcast next week? So we emerged from our slumber and answered a Fishmail for the first time in 3 years. Will the community lose its
Yes.
mind?
We're done. We're done.
And Wizards will have to come in.
Yep, it's been a good 505 episodes. Not making it to 506. Yeah.
All right. Let's go for a real question here. Sinfold, do you think Power 9 and other extreme high-end cards will crash like the luxury watch market is crashing now?
Wow, I don't know anything about luxury
I don't know
watches.
about anything about the luxury watch market, but presumably it is crashing hard. Will Power 9 crash? What are we in a Power 9 bubble? What do you know what's going on with Power 9 right now?
Power 9,
I mean-
I don't know if there's anything going on, but I'd have to assume that if anything ever happens to Power 9, it's because Magic as a game just does not exist anymore.
So I don't think anything like super specific is happening with the Power 9 that I've seen like recently. I know there was a lot of growth during like the pandemic era where we got to see a lot of the reserve list cards like going up in price when people were home and getting stimulus money and so forth. So we saw a lot of it around then. I think, man, that's so tough. I think there's a chance that the Power 9 crashes. When you look at a card like Black Lotus going from a few $100s to $500,000 or whatever ends up, that's like the high end for a graded copy. But seeing it go from a few $100s to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the course of a couple decades, that's like kind of ridiculous, right? Like, I think the idea that we could be in a bubble with Power 9 cards is realistic. And like, if people eventually stop caring about Magic, would they still pay $500,000 for a Black Lotus? I don't know if they would, but I don't think that we're like in some imminent crash or whatever, like happening soon. But I do think there's a chance that those like someday people just might not care about Black Lotus or might not care about the Moxen because they might not care about Magic in 50 years.
Let me give you this.
I mean,
so
let me ask
obviously
you
if
this, Beth.
Magic goes extinct, then these cards take a hit,
Yeah.
right? And you're hoping that, they have collector value, they'll stay. But let's say Magic is thriving more than ever. Does Black Lotus as a chase card get replaced by something else? So like the 1/1 serialized ring, right? Or like 5-10 years from now, you've probably never interacted with the Black Lotus in your life, right? Like you don't know how broken it is or anything. And are you chasing after the 1/1 Final Fantasy Universes Beyond card or the 1/9 Lord of the Rings cards, whatever, right? Like is Black Lotus at risk of being replaced as the chase card for collectors? Is that possible? Because it has the advantage of being
No.
OG, right?
Yeah, I don't think
mean,
that's possible.
Technically, the One Ring was sold for more than a Black Lotus, right? The One Ring is the most expensive,
But there's
or
only
the
one
most
of those.
The one
I
of
guess
one ring,
I
right,
guess
yeah.
that's better than like say a perfect 10 Lotus, like a Black Label. I don't even know if a Black Label 10 Lotus exists, right? But theoretically, you can get one that's close to a 1/1. Would that go for more or less than the One Ring?
I don't think it does, right? Because there's literally only one ring. The ring could have come back graded as a 0.1. It wouldn't matter, right? Because it's the only one.
Scarcity, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be replaced, right? I would be shocked to see Black Lotus be replaced as a collectible. I think there will be other collectibles like the 1/1 ring that'll also drive interest. But I think as long as Magic is doing well, I think there will be demand for the Power 9 cards. Just look at like other games. Aren't like first edition
Charizard.
Pokemon, Jahar, like
Yeah.
you don't play with those. They're just collectibles, but
you
they're
know who
still like,
Charizard
incredibly
is, and you interact with Charizard in the modern form, right? But like if you started playing the game 5 years ago, do you know what a Black Lotus is? Like really? Like, you don't have that same nostalgia. So I'm curious. I think
Black
you guys are right
Lotus
though. Like we're
is
probably
our
not replacing
Charizard.
it, but I don't think it's as bulletproof as we would have thought like 10, 15 years ago with the way the game is heading and new players and all of that, right? Like the thing with like Superman #1, you still love Superman today. You interact with all new Superman stuff, right? But if the future is, I don't know, Toski cards or something, right? And like all you're doing is Toski, like what nostalgia does Black Lotus bring to you other than just being an old Magic card? Like we don't interact with it anymore. So that is a question mark for me.
yeah.
I mean,
no, that
you
is a
don't
fair point.
interact with it in the same way that like, you don't really, no one plays that Charizard. The Charizard actively sucks. But like it's like just iconic, right? And it'll always be emblematic of like the game, right? So Charizard, everyone thinks Pokemon, oh, like a first edition Charizard. Black Lotus is our Charizard. So I think as long as Magic exists, I can't imagine it getting replaced just because of how like that's just our Charizard. That's our Pikachu, right? Like that is Magic. Doesn't matter what IP.
I thought it was that furball thing from well, I forgot his name. Loot.
Oh,
Loot.
I wish
or
I
Lil
wish
Geary.
I thought that was our
Lil
Pikachu.
Geary, our rice pup.
I
Our
love
rice
Lil
friend.
Geary. Why won't they just make a cute little critter our logo that isn't like a squirrel? It needs to be nonsense, okay? But I can't imagine anything ever replacing it. Maybe we get lucky, or like I guess it would be a new set comes out and it hits a certain fandom that like goes so hard, and that means comic book fandoms or anime fandoms, right? So let's say if like Marvel, I don't know, Thanos is like they give you the Infinity Gauntlet, right? And that's like a serialized card or something. I don't know, right? So if that's the case, then like that card may hit points of like I guess expensive, like just like costliness that I think could maybe replace it. Because if like Marvel brings in like a silly amount of people, or Final Fantasy brings in a silly amount of people, and they're just like, oh, I really want Aerith's hair bow, like that's the most expensive thing in the entire world, in the world of Magic, then maybe that's what we're known for.
I think
Maybe that's what happens. That's the only way we could replace it.
It only really works with serialized cards, though, right? I think there'll be cards that will sell for more than Black Lotus, like we saw with the One of One ring, but it's hard for that to be more iconic, I think, because there's only one of them, and Post Malone owns it, and it will never go on the market again. So it's not like
after our
you can even get
300th
one
one
if
of
you
one
want
card
to.
set. The pool of them,
Yeah.
the pool of them
Yeah.
will be greater than the number of Black Lotuses combined.
Yeah, maybe the one of one cards end up long term being something that rivals that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think your Black Lotus is safe for now. Anyway,
White Lotus
I
is
think that-
coming, Seth.
It
Add
only
more
makes
mana.
3
What
white
is this?
It just makes white mana. That's it.
A zero cost that just adds 4 white pips. Still hilariously
Oh my
broken.
god, so broken. Anyway, everyone, I think that brings us to the end of our podcast for today. Richard, where do people send in Fishmail for next week?
All right. If Wizards consents, we're gonna send them at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 504 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Cribb, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.